So let's do firmware stuff, okay? What is firmware? That is programs that are stored inside of a ROM. What is a ROM? Read-only memory, flash ROM, flash read-only memory chips that run before the operating system and allow the CPU to communicate with the hardware. What is UEFI? Unified Extensible Firmware Interface. This is a modern firmware standard that manages hardware booting and system setup, supersedes the BIOS. What does BIOS stand for again? Basic Input Output System. That's correct. What is BIOS? Basic Input Output System. This is an older firmware layer, now replaced with the UEFI, but still used interchangeably in name. We still use the name, but now it's different. Okay, what type of ROM is used for firmware today? Flash ROM. We saw that previously, didn't we? Flash ROM, which is a non-volatile and can be updated. What does non-volatile mean? What does volatile and non-volatile memory mean? That means volatile means when the data is lost when the computer switches off, and non-volatile memory means the data is restrained, like is kept even after the computer is powered off. Okay, so what does non-volatile mean? Yeah, that's correct. It means that the data persists even when the power is removed. What is CMOS? It is a small amount. Tell me the meaning. What does CMOS stand for? CMOS stands for complementary metal oxide semiconductor. That's what it stands for. And this is a small amount of battery that is backed with memory that stores firmware settings such as time, boot order, and passwords. What powers a CMOS memory? Yep, it is a coin cell battery that is called a CMOS battery, which is often the CR2032. How do you access system setup, or the BIOS or UEFI? By pressing the keys during a boot. Usually it's delete or F2. If you press these keys, that's when you'll be able to access your BIOS. Which settings are found in system setup? System info, boot order, virtualization toggles, overclocking, security, and the device enabling or disabling. Which firmware settings must be enabled for virtualization? That would be the Intel VT or the AMD V, which is the virtualization side of it. And then what is secure boot? What is a secure boot? That would be a UEFI feature that only allows a digitally signed bootloaders or the operating system files to run, protecting against boot time and malware. What is a secure boot? That would be the UEFI feature that only allows digitally signed bootloaders and the operating system files to run, protecting against boot time malware. What is TPM used for? TPM stands for Trusted Platform Module, which provides a secure key storage for features like BitLocker, full disk encryption as well. What is POST? Post. What does that stand for? Power on self-test. It checks the system hardware during the startup and reports errors via the beeps or the text. What does one long plus two short beeps usually mean? There's a video problem. What does a repeating beep usually mean? There's a RAM problem. What does a single short beep with an end at the end of a post mean? Everything is okay. What is a postcard? All diagnostic tools that shows post progress codes to identify failures. How does legacy BIOS boot? It uses a bootstrap loader to scan the devices in boot order for the boot sector and then loads the operating system. How does a UEFI boot? How does that one boot? A UEFI boot manager directly launches the operating system bootloader from the boot configuration without scanning the boot sectors. What is PXE boot? What is a PXE boot? That stands for Pre-Boot Execution Environment. Pre-boot execution environment which boots from the network server. How do you clear the CMOS settings if they are locked out? If you are locked out, you can use the control CLRTC jumper, or you remove and reinsert the CMOS battery. That's what you can do if you are locked outside. What happens if the CMOS battery fails? The system clock resets and you may see the CMOS settings not set, or there would be errors, When should you update the firmware? Only when it's necessary, e.g. if you want to support a new CPU or RAM or apply like a security fixes, Only when it's necessary, because this is like performing brain surgery, bruh. Yeah, so what is the risk of updating firmware? If there is a failed update, a bad flash, that means you can break the motherboard. A brick does not move. It does not do anything. It's bricked, like it's done, bruh. We done. Yay!